Hello, my name is Reggie Young. I'm here with Ross Zeiger. Ross, if you could take a quick minute to explain a little bit about who you are and how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Reggie, for having me on. I'm Ross, obviously, and I'm originally from Washington State. I went to University of Washington. I became a military officer like Reggie. I did ROTC at University of Washington, which meant that I commissioned as a second lieutenant into the Marine Corps. And I started down a path of becoming a pilot, a helicopter pilot, and got about 200 hours flying three different models of aircraft. And I was on the verge of becoming winged, and I dropped out. I hated flying. I
Mm,
hated, really what it came down to is I didn't enjoy being in the military, and so dropping out was my fastest path out. Um, but yeah, ultimately just I cut that path short and got reassigned as an air support control officer. I had to finish up my active duty contract, and so, yeah, I was air support control officer, which is like air traffic control, but more mobile version. We operate out of Humvees with maps and radios. It's, like, super antiquated,
mm.
but that's what we did, and, I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and then Korea for 6 months, went all over the Pacific on different exercises and things, and then, I met my wife when I was in Korea, and shortly after that, in November of 2019, I got out, so that was about 3 years ago at this point, um, and then I just planned to travel for as long as I could, but my timing wasn't great. We entered 2020, I started traveling in Mexico and then Southeast Asia, and then got stuck in Nepal during COVID lockdowns, and so I was there for 3 months and then came back to the US. I had no plan, I had no job, I had nothing lined up, so I ended up buying a business, which was something I've always wanted to do. It was run a business, and that business was a doggy daycare, and so ran that for almost a year, grew it from practically nothing. It opened during COVID, so there was, like, no customers, nothing went how the founders expected it to, and, grew it into a little bit of something and then sold it again after about I think it was about 10 months that we ran that. Um, and then I didn't use a broker for that process. I just figured everything out myself. But that introduced me to the world that brokerage even existed, which is what I do now. Um, and then I spent a year as a consultant between that running that business and becoming a broker, and that leads me to what I do now. So
Excellent. I didn't know that you were in flight school, and that's pretty interesting because having gone to the Air Force Academy, a lot of my friends have become pilots. And when I was at the Air Force Academy, it is like the number one of the top places to go if you want to be a pilot. It's like if you're there, all you hear about for the whole time I was there was like, be a pilot, like be a pilot, be a pilot, be a pilot.
right,
And everyone kind of drinks the Kool-Aid in a way. Or a good amount of people do. And there are a lot of my friends who, having watched, they always said Top Gun was like the movie that inspired them
yeah,
to be a pilot.
especially because
Yeah.
as Marines we go to Navy flight school, and so all the Navy pilots say, "Oh, I want to fly F-18s." Like, yeah,
Yeah, making like Top Gun references here and there and trying to be cool, but not too cool. Um, uh,
exactly.
in regards to that. Yeah, and it's interesting, just, um, it makes me think about one, like flying was never really my thing. When I joined the military, it was like just to kind of get ahead in life and push past some blocks that I felt like I was hitting.
Mhm.
And when I got accepted to the Air Force Academy, it was I thought to myself, "Oh, I never thought I could be a pilot before." But then for us, it was I don't know what it's like for Marine officers, but it's probably the same. But for us, it's a 10-year commitment after 2 years of training. Is it the same for you guys?
Exactly.
Yeah, and is I have
That
I have a hard time committing to anything for more than a couple of years, let alone 12.
yes.
So I bet that kind of
That that
weighed on
was
you. Yeah.
that was exactly my, like, line of thinking. Like, if I winged, I would have had a 8-year commitment, and that was just, like, daunting. Like, I just was not up for that. So,
Right. Yeah. 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 And I
yeah.
remember like thinking to myself when I was at a preparatory school, I met a pilot and I felt like everyone that I met was is almost like they were high a little bit in terms of being a pilot. Like, yeah, pilot, pilot,
Mm.
pilot. And I was like, interesting. And my first like year at the preparatory school, I met a pilot there. And it was like the first person I felt that I met that was like kind of calm, and he looked at me and he was kind of telling people like, "Hey, like don't drink the Kool-Aid too much, you know, like make sure that this is what you want to be doing." And it was the first time I heard that from somebody. Like that one counter I guess like counterproductive, for lack of a better word, voice that everybody else was
Mhm.
saying, and it kind of resonated with me because I wasn't all in on being a pilot, and I really started to hold on to that. So I talked to him after like the meeting, and he said, I asked him like, so how is it? He said, oh, like, to be honest, he said the word that really resonated with me, and he said glorified bus driver. And I thought to myself, oh, I never thought about it that way. Like I never thought about it that way. And I'm not saying I have a lot of respect. Trust me, like gone through the academy, have friends that are fighter pilots, all types of pilots. I have so much respect for what pilots go through, right? Especially coming from a military background. A lot of respect for that. Um, but I think deep down, it's just for me, something they were early signals for me recognizing that it wasn't the path for me. And I
Mhm.
had met other cadets and other people who didn't know what path they wanted to go down. And they were just like, I just want to be a pilot because it's cool. Or I just want to be, I could tell there's a lot of group think and people didn't know what they wanted to do. So they kind of just literally drank the Kool-Aid and did what others wanted to do. And I know a few of them now are kind of like they're literally stuck. And then when you get stuck, then you really start to be like, well, then you just kind of accept it, and then and
Yeah.
then you form a whole identity around it. And we really do form our identities around, most people do, around what they do in their 9 to 5, or and that influences the people you're around, which influences your beliefs and your culture and everything. And it runs so deep. Like the programming runs so deep. The culture will run so deep. And I'm really thankful that I identified that for me that path like wasn't for me. But I think it's really cool that for you, you were able to basically fly. You got like, you know,
Yeah.
so many flight hours, and then you didn't have to do like the whole 10 years, and you identified that it wasn't for you. And the last thing I want to really mention, because I rarely get people who were in flight school on the podcast. You're the first person. I'm probably sure you'd be the last one that I have on the podcast. So I want to share something I thought was very interesting as well. That comes to my mind is when I was at the academy, there was a lot of people, right, who were motivated, who really want to be like a fighter pilot. And if people don't know, like being a fighter pilot amongst being a pilot is really hard. It's normally like best of the
Mhm.
best get selected for that position. And then you're going to the academy where the best of the best are all competing for that one goal to be a fighter pilot. And it was a weird culture that I noticed where, you know, a lot of 18 to 22-year-old people right out of high school, very kind of like trying to learn their masculinity in a way and in like a military type of way, while trying to be like, while knowing that their end goal was Top Gun type of fighter pilot mentality, while still trying to be like a cool bro. So like the excellence that I saw them trying to attain, they always kind of have to cap it a little bit and be like, oh, like, oh, that's cool, but like, oh, you're too much of a nerd for one. You're like a try hard. So you have to like try hard while still looking cool. And I thought that was kind
Yeah.
of I really didn't like that mentality at the time. I thought it was like, older now looking back, I thought to myself like, this isn't probably the best way to go about creating a good culture of like just being around people that want to be the best versions of themselves, whatever that is. And
Mhm.
it brings me back to this one uh, person that I met. He was like kind of like really like this big nerd, but he always wanted to be like a fighter pilot. I remember going to his dorm room and he had this whole like video game flight simulator all set up. And he was like playing all the planes and all this kind of stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, I've been wanting to fly since I was 6 years old. My dad's a
Yeah.
pilot, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and he's now a fighter pilot. And I thought to myself, and I even asked him too, is like, hey, did all this help you do that? And he's like, oh yeah, totally. Like doing the simulator games as a kid with all like the trying to get it as correctly as possible helped him when he was going through training, just gave him a little bit of an edge of familiarity and all that kind of stuff. And I think like he got there because he was willing to embrace that counterculture of like of showing that he wanted to be a pilot and like being proud and being like, hey, this is actually what I want to do. I don't care if you think of me as a nerd or whatever, or I get ostracized because I'm not quote unquote cool enough. So anyway, that's immediately what I thought about when it comes to being a pilot. The next thing I thought about is, man, you really had a really cool few years. You were able to fly a couple of airframes, helo pilot. My understanding too, helo pilots they're definitely more of the top bred type of tracks. And and then on top of that, you're in Korea. So you're like, I was stuck in North Dakota, super small town. And here you are, like traveling Southeast Asia. So how was that experience for you, being in Korea and being in that part of the world?
Yeah, you raised a lot of really good points with you talking about your buddies that became pilots and stuff. I liked a lot of what you said, and I could talk about all that stuff. But um, yeah, Southeast Asia. So I did an exercise in Thailand. So I was there for a month, and then I was in Philippines for a month, and then yeah, the other places, Korea, Japan that I mentioned. And that's the thing is it sounds glamorous, like you
Hmm.
as with a lot of things in the military, it sounds glamorous, you see the recruiting posters, but the reality is far different. Like, flying is a prime example, like, it sounds so awesome to be a jet pilot, but what you don't see is that for every hour of flying, you're doing 15 hours of study and preparation, like, whether it's hitting the simulator or planning the flight, getting the flight information, just waiting for your plane to be ready. It's like there's a lot behind the scenes. Um, so traveling to those places, it was cool and there was cool experiences, but I had very little free time. So it wasn't like I was going out and trying a bunch of Thai food and going to Bangkok and
Right, right,
stuff
right,
like that. So I wanted to get out and do it on my own. And the whole time I was there, I was like, man, this sucks. It's like I'm in a like I don't know, a controlled environment, just
yeah,
looking out at
right,
what's there.
right.
So
Yeah, it's interesting. I felt um, somewhat the same way when I was at the academy. We had a summer where we went and shadowed other people from different career fields. So I was sent to MacDill, Florida, and there I shadowed different people like special forces acquisition officers, which I really wanted to do at the time. I shadowed some pilots. I went up in the airframe, um, and I just thought to myself, and hearing the stories of them saying like, yeah, it's hot right now in the plane. Like it was hot. I was in my flight suit. We're sitting there on the runway, and
yeah.
I'm just like burning up. And he's like, "Oh, this is nothing. Wait till you're deployed." And they have all this stuff covered up for security.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, and we're just sitting here with like no AC, and I'm just like burning up, like sitting there. I'm like, oh man, like I could not do this for this long. And anyways, so they had flown in, and I always heard like, join the military to travel. And that was kind of like the marketing tactic that there's part of the reason why I decided to join. I was like, okay, I can like leave Hawaii and kind of see other parts of the world, which a lot of people where I'm from don't really do that. They visit Seattle and Vegas, and that's about it. And or California. So I thought, okay, I can join the military and travel, but I couldn't do that. Um, I realized I couldn't do that in the military. And it was like, okay, officer, as you're enlisted, you're supposed to travel every 4 to 5 years. I joined the military, I become an officer, and now officers travel every 4 to 5 years instead of every 2 to 4 or every 2 years. And
Mhm.
then I meet pilots, and pilots are like, yeah, we travel all around the world, this and that. Then I meet pilots, and they legitimately go. Most of their it looked like most of their routine was, we fly to this one state or this one area. We're there for like 2, 3 days, then we fly back. And I remember like arriving with some of them, literally like getting off the plane with a few of them. They have their bags, and then they roll into a rinky dink hotel on base. They crack open a few beers. They go to sleep alone, maybe with, a couple of their coworkers. They wake up the next day. They don't have a car. They don't have the freedom to go out, right? They can't have fun because they have to fly back and they have to be fit to fly. And
Right.
it really struck a chord with me. And it was something for me, it was like, it didn't resonate with me. And it did for a lot of my other friends, which was great for them. They're like, I love it. This is what I want to do. Great. You know, all of you, but I don't want to be a, a, a pilot. And so I guess like you and I'm really glad, at least for me, I'm really glad that I was able to not listen to any of the noise and just kind of listen to how I felt and be like, yeah, this isn't for
Mhm.
me. Because I would imagine it's really hard when you're in flight school, when you're around that whole environment of people that are like, this is like best of the best. This is where it happens. You are this and this. And to pull back from that, man, it's got to be like really hard. I mean, I couldn't, how did that feel? Like, were you going through like different thoughts of like, this whole career change, becoming an officer, going through all these hours? Like, how was that like changing you?
Yeah, so there was really interesting question. There's the whole, like, sunk cost fallacy, I'd spent 2 years and so much stress and hours and everything, studying for all these flights and tests and everything along the way. And so it was definitely like the hardest decision of my life, probably. And then the really interesting thing was though that once I did it, once I announced to my staff and everything that I was like, I'm done, I'm dropping out, and it got around to the other students and stuff, people came up to me and were like, "Man, that's crazy. I could never do that. Like, I'm envious of you though. Like, I hate
Right.
this." And it was
Yeah, yeah,
crazy. It was
yeah.
like probably 5 people told me that. Like,
Right.
I hate this. I would do that too, but my
Yeah,
parents
but
expect this of me, or
right, right.
I've come this far, like
Right.
whatever. So that
Yeah,
was really eye opening.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I never looked back. I've never regretted it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy the amount of buts and excuses that people give themselves, and like you said, it's usually for something it's always something for or at least it seems like something other than themselves. For
Yeah,
my family or, come this far, it's like time lost, but what about, like, what you actually want, right? And having the strength to, like,
right.
step away from that, and for me, I was 13 years in the military, enlisted in 2007. Um, I was more than a few ways away. I was more than halfway through towards retirement. So I was seen as crazy for throwing it all away. Literally
Yeah.
seen as crazy. And I made the decision when I was losing a lot of money, like losing a lot of money. But
Mhm.
I made it all up and then some. And now I have the freedom to legitimately go wherever I want. I can work on my own hours. I can go to Thailand or any other country, and I can actually do whatever I want. Like whatever, I can do whatever I want, and it's just absolutely amazing. So if you could explain a little bit about how that whole process was for you when you got out and you decided to buy a dog, was it a dog pet daycare or dog care physical business? Can you explain like that whole process, what that was like, and then what the process was like selling it?
Yeah, so I'll start by addressing something you just said about, like, people who join to do 20 years or, like, expect to do 20 years. There's kind of a anti-ambitious, like, uh, approach in the military with some people who are like, "I'm just gonna do my 20 years, and then I'm gonna
Right.
relax, and I'll be done when I'm 38, and I'll chill the rest of my life," and I really did not like that that mentality because it's like people that just wanna get by and just have free healthcare for the rest of their life and kinda do the bare minimum, and so, um, yeah, I didn't that's one thing that I didn't enjoy about some of my peers, and a lot I mean, most people in the military are great, of course, but, um, just wanted to mention that.
Right.
So, yeah, how I bought the doggy daycare and ended up selling it and stuff. Um, so, yeah, I was back from Nepal and had no plans. I would I'd planned to be out of the country during that time, and here I was stuck during lockdown, and I was just browsing through, like I don't even know if I knew about Biz Buy Sell at that time, but I was on a Facebook Marketplace, and I saw that there was this distressed doggy daycare, basically, it opened during COVID, and they were just trying to get out of it. Just it wasn't working how they'd expected, and it was cheap. I had a significant amount of savings from my time in the military, and I basically just went for it, like, with
Right.
very little due diligence.
Hell yeah.
Again, I had no broker. I didn't have a
Right.
CPA look at it or
Right.
anything like and so I bought it, and I was found myself grooming dogs the next day.
That's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
it all happened super quick, just, like, informal contracts and everything, purchase agreement, took over the rent, and, ended up hiring some employees, grew into a legitimate business, had some, like, social media presence and advertising, and it was a I call it my real life MBA, like, my
Yeah.
trial by
Totally.
fire MBA,
Oh
like,
yeah. Yeah.
I learned marketing, sales, again, management, hiring, firing, and, um, everything, every aspect of the business, bookkeeping, so it was a great experience, and then but it wasn't, like, what we wanted to do forever. My wife had other plans, she's trying to become a veterinarian, so, um, it was it was obvious that we had to get out of it as quickly as possible, and so that's what we did. We ended up selling it and, yeah, moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think to myself, I was a business management major at the Air Force Academy, and it was known to be one of the top. places to go for business management in the nation for undergraduate. And I learned more failing at selling iPhone 6 cases on my Wix.com website in 6
Mhm.
months about business than I learned in 4 years at a university about business management. So I really think it's worth just getting into some kind of online business because people reach out to me. They're like, "Hey, how can I get started? What path should I go down?" Et cetera, et cetera. And it's like if you just starting for most people is the reason why they never hit that 3 pointers. They never even pick up the ball and try a layup,
Absolutely.
you know, or try a half court shot. Doesn't matter. Pick that thing up and go because you're gonna learn all about the mechanics, the failure, etc. And it's just gonna get easier and easier, and that you'll double down on that momentum. But I really love what you said about literally an MBA degree. And I would imagine it's next level when you're doing online and a physical space at the exact same time. Like you're
Mhm.
literally like doing all hats. Like when I do online business, I've never owned a physical business. It's not something that I'm attracted to, but I could not imagine like physical store, like employees coming in. That must be so real, especially after walking away from a career as a military officer. What are some things that worked out well for you while you were doing that, or things that you struggled with like throughout that process?
Yeah, I think when you say things that worked well, the first thing that comes to mind, the most, like, crazy, like, drawing buzz for our business was Facebook ads. We ran a Facebook ad early on, like, maybe a month and a half into running the business, and I set it at, like, $5 a day or something like that, and that was the first and only time I've ever gone somewhat viral online, like,
Hell yeah.
it
Yeah.
got we were in a small town in Washington State, and it got something like 10,000 views
Oh,
in
geez.
a few hours,
Yeah.
and 'cause our prices were too low. That was another big lesson was setting prices and how
Mhm.
to charge and stuff, but so it was just a picture of our prices, and then we posted that as a Facebook ad, and, like, 10,000 people saw it, and the phone was ringing off the hook for, like, 2 days straight,
Yeah.
and that was the time where, like, our business went from, "Oh, crap, should I have done this?" to, like, "Okay, this is gonna work out."
Yeah.
Um, and so that was a powerful lesson, like, my first time ever running any type of ad online and just how crazy effective it could be.
Yeah.
Um, what was the other lessons learned, things that went
Yeah, like things
poorly?
that you really struggled with that you maybe had to push through, or lessons learned in terms of things that were hard, like a big
Yeah,
problem. Rough.
I think this is something that every entrepreneur has is, like, letting go of control, hiring for the first time. I didn't hire for, like, the first 4 or 5 months, so it's,
Mm.
like, 100% my wife and I doing everything, like,
Yeah.
cleaning, answering phones, everything, and then, finally worked up the trust and also the, like, ability to train and let somebody else open the store and check in customers and things like that, answer the phone, and so that's always a big hurdle, I feel like, in every
Mhm.
entrepreneur's journey.
Man,
Um
I really respect you for that. Like leaving, I hear a lot of stories of people reasons why people don't want to leave the military. And it's like, I have a wife or I have kids, I have a family, and like you and your wife together, like together make a decision to go and do this and jump into the fire. And man, it takes a lot of courage. So mad respect for you on that. And then of course selling it, and it makes me think to the first. You talk about your win and the first advertising campaign you did with Facebook. Man, I wish my first one went that way. I feel like most people who run advertising the first time end up
Mm.
losing a lot of money. So I'm really glad that you had that massive experience in like injection of inspiration and revenue into your business. So that must have been really cool to experience that fire the first time you run that ad.
Yeah, I think maybe because we were a local business, I could just target the zip code and, like, it's probably saturated with, like, Amazon ads, and now they get, like, a local
Yeah.
business, they're like, "Hey, this looks cool."
Right. Yeah.
And it's also goes to show the, like, advantage of using modern technology in a boring business, like
Mhm. Mhm.
that kinda thing, so
Yeah. Yeah, it gets me thinking, to be honest, one of my like retirement goals, like I never want to be done with business, but one of my retirement business goals is to have like a space and I don't know what I'm gonna call it, but it's gonna be a space where it's probably gonna be like a coffee shop during the day because I know coffee shops make a lot of money. I'll have like an activity room, which would be like co-work type of cafe, and then in the afternoons, it turns into like yoga studio, free space studio that people can rent out. And then in the evening, it's like early evening, it's like paint the night or something like that, like some kind of like a couples activity. And then in the nighttime, it becomes like a lounge bar with like DJs and stuff. So it's just basically turning over profit 24/7. You come in the morning for coffee and you get a discount code for alcohol in the evening or whatever. And with that, you're gonna have a coffee. So I want to have a coffee brand, and then you have like
Mhm.
a paint brand and a yoga brand and and literally so using that physical space to create a digital brand and all those things, and basically have that place operating 24/7. That's like my business goal dream.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah, I
awesome.
think
I've
that's
thought
really cool.
about that too with the addition of a hostel as well, like a guest house, like have that all inside of a guest house.
Yeah, who knows, man? We'd be business partners here soon.
Yeah, yeah. Do it in Mexico.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Cool. So then, if you could explain a little bit now about what you're doing now here in Mexico, and yeah, why you decided on Mexico. Are you traveling? I know you have the wife, and you also have a husky, a really cool husky,
Yeah.
really yeah, really cool dog. If you could explain a little bit about like your travel itinerary and why you're in Mexico.
Yeah, so, like, living abroad and traveling has always been part of my plans, like I said, once I got out of the military, and ending up back in the US was just because of COVID, really, like, travel didn't exist, and so all of that was kind of a detour, like running the business, becoming a consultant, and, yeah, so now I feel like I'm, like, back on the path that I wanted with my life, and my wife too, she's not American, so, um, it's yeah, we both had wanted to travel and learn Spanish, that's also part of it, we're learning Spanish while we're here, and then I'm doing something where I can do it remotely, I can talk to business owners around the US and talk to them about their business, advise them on exit, help them with the paperwork if they decide to sell, help them get listed. And then, if they're a buyer, I can help them do a search for a business anywhere in the US. But, yeah, so Mexico is just, like, it's different, it's exotic, it's, not too exotic coming from the US, but, um, it's just an interesting experience that we wanted, and it's the perfect place right now for me to start doing this, and my wife as she's getting ready for veterinarian school. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah.
Yeah. And any plans to travel to like other parts of Mexico, see some like cenotes or do anything like that? How long have you been here?
Just 6 weeks now,
Okay.
maybe almost 7 weeks. We got here early November. And yeah, we plan to we're looking at Querétaro next, which is just north of here. Um, so yeah, we might move elsewhere in central Mexico, or I've been to Cozumel. I spent a month in Cozumel back in 2020 when I first got out of the military, and I did a scuba diving program out there.
Nice.
But yeah, so we'll see. Probably somewhere else, Mexico, or possibly even going further south to, like, Colombia or something.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Colombia's interesting. Definitely a little dangerous, but I never felt more scared for my life in Colombia than anywhere else, to be honest.
interesting.
But very interesting, and it is very cheap too. I'd say it's. I'm sure there are a lot of people that live there. One of my friends, I guess, she ran into. I have one friend that was shot in Colombia,
Holy
um,
crap.
but he looks like someone that would get shot. Like he acts like
Oh,
someone that would get shot. So I mean, he was in like there super late at night. When
huh.
I was there, I think a funny story is whenever I would leave, they would say like, "Hey, when you're on the street, even during the day, don't have your phone out." So like that kind of thing like got me a little nervous when you're
Common
in a
sense
taxi,
stuff, yeah.
like have the window up, lock the door, don't have your phone out in taxi because then people come by on the motorcycle. You're just like there's like some kind of word that basically means like don't act like a tourist. Um and but there's a lot of things like that to me that weren't inherently like ingrained in my like travel like acumen at the time. Well, and what's great about like Mexico City, some people say it's like quote unquote still dangerous or whatnot, but a lot of places are also dangerous. I don't have that fear here, right? I'm sure you don't have that fear here when we catch
Yeah.
Ubers all over the place.
Yeah,
But yeah,
not a problem.
yeah, it's definitely a place worth visiting. That's for sure. Like other places, they open up our perspective. I want to dive in now into more of like the brokerage type of thing. So, you are a broker now, and what made you want to get into that, and what are you currently working on as it relates to being a business broker?
Yeah, so, again, sold my business without a broker. I found out during that process that they existed, and I spoke to one on the phone, and my business was too small for brokers to deal with. It was a small transaction, and so, um, he was like, "I can't help you with that, but, I'll tell you what I know. I'll tell you how it works and stuff like that." And it was really cool, and I was like, "That sounds interesting." Like, that sounds as fun as running a business, like, just to help
Really?
people with selling their businesses. And so, I had it in the back of my mind, ended up becoming a consultant for Deloitte for about a
Okay.
year, and then as I was looking towards what's next, I jumped towards a brokerage to become an agent for First Choice Business Brokerage is the company I'm a broker for. And, yeah, so the more I love looking at businesses. I love just browsing biz buy sell and seeing what's out there. And actually, before I made the leap to being a broker, I was looking very seriously at buying another business, and I looked at hundreds, and then probably got NDAs, got information on 20 of them, and like got very close to buying one. I had like pre-approval for an SBA loan and stuff like that. And I was at a crossroads. It's like either I buy this business and I stay in the US and like go down this path, or I like quit my job, sell everything and go to Mexico and do this other thing. Obviously I picked that path. But yeah, so I've always just loved the like looking at businesses, diving into the financials, like seeing how I could improve it, things
Yeah.
like that.
It's like real
And
life case
so
study.
what's that?
It makes me think of like in business school when you do like these little mini case studies. It's like real life.
Uh,
It's just like real fun. Anyway, but yeah,
Yeah,
go on.
yeah. I was a history major, so I never even, like, have done all that. I've never taken an
Mhm.
accounting course or anything,
Okay.
but, um, yeah, that probably would be right up my alley.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
But,
not as fun as running a real business. I'll tell you that for sure. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The best business education is business.
Totally.
Running a bit. Um, so, yeah, what else? So, that's kind of it. It was kind of just, like, following what was interesting to me. It was just talking about business, looking at buying businesses, and I think I'm not the type of personality that starts a business. I always the people I admire most are founders, but I've come to realize that's not me. Like I'm definitely suited towards buying an existing business and improving it. And so it just fits naturally for me to help other people do that as well.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm helping someone right now exit their business, and they want to exit because they're not someone who scales or anything like that. So there really
Mm.
are different people, right? Like you said, you'd
Yeah.
rather buy a business and then operate from there. And I know people that rather like start up a business and then sell it and then not scale it. So, and there's all different ways to buy or sell a business, right? You talked about get an SBA loan. You don't have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to go and buy your first business. So you have direct experience having done that. And on top of that, like the way I see it is there are a lot of advisors and brokers out there who may have their like certification or their license or something like that, but they never operated their own business. They never like started one
Mm.
from the ground up or bought one and like went through the trenches like you did, And I think the way I think about it is like, why would I want to if I was buying a house, why would I trust a real estate agent who doesn't have their own house? Or I mean,
Mm.
it's like they didn't go through the same like sweat equity that maybe I had to get to a certain point. And then maybe another analogy would be like, why would I trust a fitness trainer who's fat or who doesn't have the body type that I would want? Like for me, I think having that real understanding of what it took to build something and operate it is very important when you're looking to that person for advice. Like, yes, it could be, related to financials or whatever, but I think just like energetically wise or like just honoring what you've built, you have to work with people who understand truly what you've built and what it means to you. So that's just my initial thoughts on choosing brokers to work with is try and choose people who've actually built
Been
or
there, done that.
have been there,
Yeah.
done that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to think if I have anything to add to that. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it helps a lot. I mean, I don't I don't know how most brokers get into this. I think a lot start as real estate agents. That's
right.
for sure. They start as commercial real estate agents, and so and then they see that, "Oh, I could be selling this business as well."
Mhm.
But you're right, they don't have that experience 'cause el so much of it is emotional, like,
Right.
somebody let's say it's a guy that's been building his business for 40 years, like, it's not just about money for him. He wants to see
Yeah.
this thing continue, it's his legacy,
Mhm.
and so, a lot of times, sellers won't just look for getting the dollar amount they want or getting maximizing the dollar amount. They'll look for, like, "Do I like this guy? Does he have the right is he gonna treat my customers well, my friends well," you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so there's a huge emotional aspect to it that somebody who has owned a business will understand.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think something like, definitely more than of, half of the profit made in a business is made when you sell it. And I know for
Mhm.
sure, like a majority of entrepreneurs' wealth is actually locked up in their business. So it's
Yeah.
it's not like kind of buying a house and putting a little bit down and like this the safety and security of a mortgage compared to like literally executing one of the biggest transactions of your life. So I think it really comes down to like managing that client and really connecting with them, and it just makes it so much easier to connect with them when they know that you've been through a very similar path as them. So um, with that, Ross, I want to thank you for coming on the show. If people are interested in reaching out to you to learn more about your experience buying, selling businesses, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, email is ross@rosszeiger.com. My website, rosszeiger.com, and there's links to my Twitter, YouTube. I post, how to buy a business series and other useful tidbits in the business buying world, and what else? Yeah, Twitter and YouTube are the 2 best, and you'll find a link for that on my website,
Sweet.
rosszeiger.com.
Awesome. And I'll link that down below as well. Excellent
Awesome.
story. Love it. And we'll be in touch. We're definitely both, again, I interviewed Matt the other day. So I'm sure I'll see you here at WeWork soon. So anyway, man, we'll
Absolutely.
be in touch. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It was great talking to you.
You as well. Take care.